Hello, my name is Kirioth, and I have with me Byron from Artis Opus, and I've set a bit of a challenge because I want to paint this Vindicator to sort of match my Emperor's Children, maybe a little bit less garish and over the top, and I want to go from this, which is Huldra Blue, which is one of my favourite colours, as you probably noticed by this point, all the way up to a very, very pixie pink with the classic ice yellow. So the challenge essentially is Byron's got to tell me how to do this because I'm going to try and do it in a way that I haven't done so far. I've done my other vehicles in a slightly different way, so this is going to be a new experience for me. So yeah.
Hello guys, so you're going to be joined by me and my hands today. So essentially John has said that he's seen the stream of me doing this, which I've been told is a Alpha Legion scheme. I was just painting turquoise, and for a change. And we've looked at that, and we're going to try and find a fit within his color scheme as much as possible for doing stuff in the same technique as this. Now, you can do this technique going through like the crazy square that we did. If you've seen that in previous videos where we jump between different colors, and it's not like we start in like dark purple and go to deep red, light red, medium red, very bright red, orange, like a kind of a more normal color spectrum. You can do it like that, but it's a lot harder. So if John, could you pop the colors that you have available to you like next to your tank, and
Yep.
we're going to find a way to use as many of them as possible. Now, of course, you do have the opportunity. Let's say you've got that turret on top of the tank, or you've got the door, or you've got the vents. It might be that we can't involve all the colors that we wanted to, but you could do a stripe or something down the door or one of the hatches.
Yeah, that would work.
In a different spectrum. Have you got masking tape out of interest?
I do not. I literally used the last of it this morning for a different vehicle.
Oh, devastating. Okay, well, if you order some masking tape, that will allow us to have that. If you could pick up some, I'm not sure if you've got any varnish. I imagine you do somewhere.
Yes.
But some varnish and some masking tape. Then what we can do in a future video, or I can just instruct you and see how it turns out now, is we can use this exact technique, but rather than painting within a panel, so like I've painted this, let's find this panel here, this strip. Let's just pretend that this was masking and this was masking. You can just paint that masked off window in exactly the same fashion, but that could be a diagonal stripe down a door, or a vertical stripe down this hatch here or something. So if you wanted to have that available, or even a cross would look really cool actually, because you could have you can make one coming diagonally from one corner of the hatches or the door or something like that. There's a lot of stuff that's available. Masking tape's a fantastic tool, and if you varnish under it, there is no worry whatsoever of that horrible thing where you peel it off and accidentally you take a load of paint with it, which is heartbreaking when it does happen. So I'm not sure if stripes would fit with what you've done with your army so far, or if it's something you're keen to try, but that would allow us to take some of the colors out and then inject them at a later stage.
I think it's fair to say that I'm happy to try literally anything on this force, due to the nature of it being like Emperor's Children and very over the top and excessive, and there's some clashing stuff going on with some of the other models anyway. I kind of like the idea of everything being a bit different and having its own personality, and there being maybe some nods to older kind of markings they might have used in the form of crosses or arrows, whereas other stuff would be very over the top kind of ornamented stuff. So yeah, I feel like that would work pretty well.
Okay, cool. There's definitely scope for that. And so with that in mind, if we take some of these colors out, we will be able to dump them back in at a later stage. So I think it's the blues that are going to be difficult if we want to involve them. But we can, if you remember from the last time we did it, we said generally speaking, this technique goes from a colder color in the recesses, like this bit here. I need a pointing brush. So in the recesses, or the non-middle bits of the panel, as far as I've done the panel work here, it goes from a cooler color, which could be our deep blue or our Huldra blue, whichever one we've got, and then you could work up through your purples, because they're slightly brighter, through your pinks, much brighter, brightest pink, and then as ever finish with the ice yellow. And then you're only knocking out a couple of the colors from your scheme, which you can put elsewhere. And I think a big, bold, like a cross or a diagonal will look pretty badass. You also have on a rhino, I think yours has got a similar front to mine. It's not got any fancy doodads on it, has it?
Yeah, mine's the Vindicator. So I've got the gun on the front, but that just means there's more scope for doing fun things, to be honest.
Yeah. You've got other areas where you could do stuff. So, for example, we could carefully mask off this section and just this recessed bit here. Some people sometimes paint these a different color.
Yeah.
You could do that, or you could do the smokestacks. They're really easy to mask off. So what you can do is you put masking tape in a straight line here, here, and here, and then these little bits where it get fiddly, because they're smokestacks, you can just smudge in some black to clean up any mistakes you've made there as is.
Yep.
Which works fantastically. Really, really good way to go about it. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for that. So with that in mind, let's go from Huldra to your Xeris purple equivalent, and then your hot pink, your baby pink, and then the lemon yellow.
Sounds good. All
right.
I have to admit, it was literally using these brushes that made me tackle my my Typhon Heavy Siege tank in the first place, because I just did not know how to go about that thing. It's massive. It's bigger than a Land Raider, and it's just all flat surfaces, and I just didn't know what to do. And then I tried.
It's intimidating, can't it?
Well, yeah, I've never been great with vehicles, and I wasn't sure just how to go about it. And I was like, well, I've tried this on a couple of other models. Like, I've tried these brushes and this technique on a few other models. I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. If the worst thing that will come out of it is that I need to strip it. Like exactly. That's the worst case scenario. And it ended up coming out really well. And then I ended up repainting both of my Imperial Knights to match it, and it's all just sort of escalated from there, really.
Fantastic. That's what we want to hear. So let's try and do something that's successful here today. That should be our aim, is to get something that is becomes that infectious.
Yeah.
So definitely. If you could grab what we're going to do, dude, is we will. Which is the most uniform side of yours? Is it the back or probably the sides?
It'll be the sides. Yeah, definitely the sides. I'd reckon that side. So I've got one with the Aquila over the door. The other one's got some steps in the centre. So if we do the Aquila side, because it's a bit flatter and a bit simpler.
That sounds perfect. So I will pick this side of my tank, because that's the closest to what you've got there. And then we're just going to go about this the normal way. So for those of you that haven't seen Kyrios' previous videos, we're using Artis Opus Series D here, which is a brush set that I designed. And included in that brush set is a little dampening pad, which is a really important part of the technique. So with the back of my brush, I'm going to get a drop of water, pop it there on my pad, and then I'm going to work it in pretty thoroughly to that pad. This is I'm going to call it dry brushing, but I don't believe at any point your dry brush should be dry. It's not helpful in layer painting. You've heard too thin coats, always dilute your paint, more water, blah, blah, blah. There's no reason why you should be looking at anything differently. For general rule of thumb, though, we're going to be going here before we apply paint to our brush, during using paint on our brush, and then after removing paint from our brush for cleaning purposes. Cleaning and dry brushing are the same thing. You're scraping something off and trying to remove paint from it. It's just here you're trying to remove it with painting in mind, and otherwise you're trying to remove it in cleaning in mind. The actions do not change, though. So dampen up my bristles a little bit, and then, John, if you grab your deepest, darkest colour.
Yep, I've already laid out my my Huldra blue.
Fantastic. All right then. Hopefully your scale is on board for behaving today and not having to be used like 20 times until we get through the medium.
I've found so far my Huldra blue has behaved itself pretty much every time I've used it. I can't say the same for what was the other one that I've got? There's a white that I've got that sometimes just comes out translucent to start with.
Yeah, you just get like ectoplasm out of it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's grab some of that. And the way that I use my paints, guys, this is on a texture palette. John's got one too. We make those. They're a really good place to put down your paint, test your strokes, and to make sure that anything extreme that happens somewhere that isn't your model, basically. So dampen my brush again. Let's put this in shot. And then I'm going to take some of this lovely deep saturated color, which is making a mockery of my beautiful white bristles, but we'll get over it. This isn't a new brush, by the way, guys. This is how thoroughly it's been cleaned, so I can now feel bad about that. And we're going to go at our model at a 90-degree angle. So this is something that me and John discussed a lot when we were in person. This is the angle your brush should be going at your model, unless you have another reason to do so, which generally speaking, you don't. So if I wanted to simulate overshadowing or something, then maybe I would have a reason to do that. But at the moment, all we are doing is simply just putting down a base coat on our model. And this is a really, really fast way to do it. So I want to get pretty much everywhere with this. One of the reasons this is such a nice way of doing things is that no one area of your model ends up with more paint than the other. So it doesn't matter if it's a recess, if it's a raised area, whatever it is, it's still going to get pretty much the same amount of paint. Whereas if you were doing this in a layering fashion, if somewhere, like if I was wiping it into here, I'd be collecting paint in this recess, a big old scoop of it. If you think of putting butter on hot toast is the analogy I always use.
Yeah.
It's going to collect. It's going to collect in the recesses. It's going to pull there, and when you look down in 5 minutes, the only areas that aren't melted butter are going to be those big swimmy pools of it, where you've put more of it than you did do elsewhere. So, putting down that stippling now.
I have to admit, it's been a while since I've put this blue just straight down over black. I usually do it over purple at the moment because I base the whole model purple, doing exactly the same technique. And I've not actually used this Ultra Blue on black before. And it's.
How's it going?
It's getting on there. It's very subtle though. It's nowhere near as noticeable.
Yeah, it shows you how deep it is. It's a really, really it's right on the far end of the scale in terms of its darkness and depth. Where you get real money from it is when you start diluting it and mixing it with brighter colors or putting it over brighter stuff. Then you really see the effect that it can have. I've actually got a little bit of the white paint. This is the brush that I was using when I was dry brushing my Bloodthirster white, and I'm actually getting some flecks coming out because that was not long ago. So that should be something that I can cover over in the next layers, but that's down to misuse on my part. So I'm going to give it another quick layer. It's quite a large section actually to be doing at once, the entire part of this. Guys, if you prefer working in smaller sections, it's fine. You'll probably get a slightly better result. The only thing to be mindful of is coherency. I've got that a little bit where the tops part I did separate to the front part, and actually they are done in slightly different styles, and that could be down to as little as just like how much paint there was in your middle blue layer. Like I could have covered 10% more of the model with that middle blue layer on one section than I did on the other, and that could be visible. But there's things you can do across the entire thing to counter that. Equally, if you want to do all of these stages on all of the model, that's fine. Whichever is your preferred way to work. It's not like one way works way better than the other.
There's a lot of room for kind of working out your own kind of like personal preferences with it, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Just going to dust my model down a bit from previous stages. Don't want that hanging about. How's yours coming on?
I reckon I've got a nice solid layer there.
Sweet. How is it drying? Because Scale 75 can take a little bit more time than some other brands to dry.
It's pretty much there already. It's
Fantastic.
It's pretty decent.
All right,
I'll just say quickly, I'm getting a few hairs out of the brush, but that when they're new brushes, which this extra large is, I haven't used my extra large anywhere near as often as my large, which is now
suffering.
it's like half the size it used to be, if that. It might be less than that actually. I'd had a quick look at the website earlier today, and I went, yeah, I think I might be down to like maybe a third of what it was now.
Yeah. It's very easy to forget because it's just the brush that you use and it's incremental, just how much it kind of changed. But that is absolutely possible. I've seen some worn down to, without any exaggeration, like 10% of of their starting size. So
yeah, it's
it's one of the nice things about the brushes. They break in rather than breaking. They don't splay outwards. So you'd be
yeah,
surprised how long you can use them, particularly for the stippling. You want more flex in there for the dry brushing, but you can have something you've retired for dry brushing purposes and be using it for stippling purposes for ages and ages and ages afterwards. So I'm just while I wait for my panel to dry, I'm just going to put down some work on some other sections.
yeah. So there's a when I turn the tank, like on the side of it, it's easy to look at it and think you've not done much, but then when you look at it compared to the top, I'm just hoping it comes through on the camera.
Yeah,
There is like, it's
yeah,
almost like a metallic sort of look to it in contrast.
Yeah, it is. It's like a blue steel for any Zoolander fans. So that's my black side of the tank, so people can look. And then here is my blue side, which is pretty much entirely dry. So it puts us in a good space to go on to the next step. Now, I'm going to be doing different colors, John, but you'll be able to see us working through different spectrums. So, John, I believe your next stage is the purple.
Yep. My
All right,
favorite.
so
well, one of my
if
favorites.
you, no one would have ever guessed. So if you take that purple and pop it down on your palette next to a little splodge of the blue, you want to be carrying on a little bit of your blue into that purple. If it wasn't so potent, I'd be saying 50-50, but we know how strong that blue is. So we just want something that isn't too much of a jump, basically, from one to the other. So guys, you'll see me, I've scooped it out. I use an old synthetic brush just to take out the paint from the GW pot and put it on my palette. Continue using the same brush. Before I start this stage, I'm just going to use my dampening pad and remove some of this super mega potent blue we've got from my brush.
I've just been doing the same properly. Properly.
You don't want to make it too wet, but just to take it off, keep it twisting, get it from, it's a circle, obviously it doesn't have edges, but you want to get it from all angles, and that will avoid things being, it's just a good practice to get into, even if it's not strictly necessary at this point. Back to the dampening pad here, it's drying out fairly fast. I'm going to put one more drop in there, work it in, back to the dampening pad, flick it out once or twice more, and then still with a little bit of moisture on that brush, I'm going to drag some of my blue, my deep blue rather, into my new blue, which is, if people are interested, 1000 Suns blue from Games Workshop. Pull them together, tell I'm happy with it, and then take it to my model. Now at this stage I could have gone too dark or too light. I will make an assessment when I start on my model. I think that is about right, actually. So with this, we are aiming for, you don't need to be obsessive about it, but we are aiming for the middle of each of the paneled sections. So the middle of this recess, the middle of this block here, the middle of the stack, which is going to be quite difficult, but we're still going to start in those sections where we've got the most paint on our brush, and I'll move on to the other sections afterwards. And I will probably step down as well in size to another brush.
This has made a really nice, like, dark, bluey, purpley colour.
Is that going to be like some repeat use in the future?
Yep, definitely.
Fantastic. So when I take my paint, guys, you'll see that I take it and then I roll my brush around, constantly spinning it. That's to make sure that I'm getting this brush, I'm getting paint on this brush from every angle. Now we're doing stippling here, which is the in and out jabbing, pokey painting. As we go on, steps will more and more involve what you would probably see as quote unquote traditional dry brushing, where you're using like a flicking motion. As you go on in the steps, that's more necessary, but at these steps, you're still trying to put down fairly significant, pretty much base, like you base coating at this stage. Think of it, and then we're moving to layering and highlighting, even though it's all with the same brush and similar technique sooner. So my big brush is causing me to not hit small sections. So I'm going to get all the sections I can with the big brush now, and then I'm going to step down to another brush after giving this brush a little bit of a clean.
Yeah,
also going to stop.
Definitely going to take a bit of a clean after this.
It's a potent color, isn't it? So when you're using the dampening pad drawing, the reason for that is rather than going back to your palette or your paint pot for more paint and just caking and caking and caking those bristles, you can do exactly the same thing by going and adding some moisture to it and just helping that paint leave more easily. You don't have to just more and more paint is not the answer. Basically, it's a better way of saying what I'm trying to say. I've actually managed to get more of the areas that I thought I would after using the dampening pad. So carry on like that, see if I can get into all the recesses I need. And then the other thing is, guys, some of you may have worked this out already. If I'm just adding water to my brush and using that to help remove paint, I'm cleaning my brush now. I'm not adding any more of the problem contaminant, which is paint, and I'm simply removing paint from my bristles. I too am using a pretty new one, so got a couple of bristles there. Don't worry about it, they shed a lot more in the first 2 or 3 times you use it. It's not something that happens throughout their life. So I'm going back to the dampening pad and using that there. As you've got less concentrated paint on your brush, guys, you don't need to be as careful. A mistake won't be noticeable in the same way at all. I'm quite pleased with how that's gone, actually. I think I've learned something there. It's easier to get in with a wetter diluted brush than it is with a more saturated one. So last pass, go at the vehicle, and that is so for the mix stage, I'm fairly happy with that. That is the deep blue mixed with 1,000 Suns blue. What I am going to do is I'm going to step down in brush size now. So I'm going to give this, because that is a potent mixture of paint that we've got on our brushes there. And I give this poor abused brush a little bit of a clean. Give it a full clean after the painting session, but for now I'm okay with that. That's taken a fair bit of it off. Could do one more slightly wetter one.
Excuse the shaky camera, I'm giving mine a good scrub as well.
That's brush care. There's always a good excuse for brush care. So we've worked a lot of that paint we built off our bristles. Still see there's some of the blue coming. It is an extremely potent paint. There's a reason why we chose to use it. You'll be able to see here after this pass just how much of the paint you can remove simply with water, guys. You don't need to be, we've got a brush cleaning soap in the pot, comes with every set, but if you just demonstrate good care between coats, it will do a lot for you. So see there.
I've found that generally speaking, provided you remember to damp them up again and then get the excess paint off, like when you're done with a particularly harsh colour, you're pretty much done. I've very rarely had to actually sit and properly clean one, and if I have, it is entirely because I've done something like a Huldra blue layer and then put that brush down, totally forgot, and then come back like an hour later and gone, I mean, it doesn't matter what brush you use. If you leave paint on it for like an hour solid in warm conditions, just don't do that. It's the easiest way to get around it.
Same with an airbrush. Like those times that you, some things are particularly, they really cake on fast. So I squirt washes through my airbrush quite a lot of the time. And if I'm a bad boy and I forget that I should have cleaned it, and I come back in the morning, then that is on me. Good news is that they will clear up. Occasionally, if you've misbehaved particularly, you can use airbrush thinner, and that's alcoholic. It's made for breaking down paint, and you can use that to take off anything stubborn. You want to make sure that you use a soap and conditioner like ours after using that, and then leave it to dry thoroughly before using it, though, because it's an alcohol. It's more damaging.
Yeah.
Less gentle. So our next stage.
And I'll just move that so you can see it in the other camera. That's where I'm at with the coverage on mine. So it's got a nice kind of purpley bluey
good
shade to it. And I'll just put the brush in front of the camera as well. Given that what I just put on this, which you can see there, is a mixture of that dark blue and that fairly rich purple to make that colour, that brush is pretty damn clean now.
Yeah. We found it a lot. It's just water. I mean, it's a lot of what we're talking about. It's not. it's not rocket science. It's just not stuff that you use to practicing whilst using dry brushing. So the moment you do get used to it, it really does get fairly easy to do things the right way, or the way that's going to extend the life of your kit. So I'm going with pure Thousand Suns blue now. You'll see that I'm being a bit less slapdash in my application, trying to be a little bit more precise. And physically, the gesture itself, the dabbing, is more gentle. You'll probably be able to hear it in terms of that tack, 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 tack sound, particularly when I'm first putting the paint on the model. It's quite a gentle one. I always start off in the middle of panels, guys. The reason for that is if I have put too much on, or I've not removed enough, either of them, or if my paint's too wet, any of the above, it's much more difficult to make a mistake when you put it in the middle of an area where you want a lot of paint anyway. So it's that, and then as I get less paint on the brush, that is the point at which I start doing my traditional flicky dry brushing, catching the edges. So if I'm dry brushing like this, you'll see me just want to go against an edge. I go back to my dampening pad. This paint is just a lot more weaker than my previous paint as well. So some paint is a pigment hero, some is less so. It makes it easier to blend with the ones that aren't so heavily just on there, like, right, give it to me. Makes it easy to blend with them, but it does mean that you're probably going to have to use a bit more paint, or diluting it can make it disappear more or whatever. It's just learning the personality of your different paints. And there's pluses and minuses to paints behaving in different ways.
Pretty sure you're going to be getting a good amount of poking sound from me at this point.
How's it going? You pleased with it so far?
Yeah, definitely.
It's rhino-shaped things are fantastic for this. I mean, obviously, like any like medium, large, big open sections is just like prime territory for the technique. It makes it particularly easy. It's fairly relaxing doing them, just because you don't need to be like constantly on it with your detail control, or being like hyper careful, and it's really, really enjoyable. So guys, I said about jabbing at your model, always at 90 degrees unless you have a reason to do otherwise. What I'm going to start doing now is I want to be going these steps. I want to be brighter on top. So I am actually probably going to be going at about a 45-degree angle to the model here, try and make it so that's something that can show up on camera. I just want to be hitting the tops of these things. If I go it from 90 degrees, they won't be getting shaded realistically. Same goes with the top of the smoke stack, exhaust, whatever they are. Back to my dampening pad, and then to my paint. And then I just want to make sure that everywhere has been hit in the bits I want it to be hit with this color. Occasionally dry brushing to make sure I catch those lips. We want to be building this up from this stage. We're now, as well as putting down that undercoat, or however you want to look at it or see it, we are beginning to highlight our model at the same time.
Now I'm going right at the base of the tracks as well, just because I wanted a little more colour down there, so a little bit. Varied it a little bit, but...
Another top tip, guys, is, so let me put a little bit more water in the dampening pad. It's warmer in here today than I was expecting. With a slightly more damp brush than I would normally do, I've got an area of this model that I'm not painting currently, the tracks. I can just use that to remove paint from my brush. And at this stage, I'm pretty much pre-highlighting that section. I'm making the bits that stick out brighter, and the recesses bits aren't being affected. If you have an area of your model, the base, or whatever way you can do this, it's a really good way to clean your brush, and also the pre-highlighting might be useful at another stage too. So between colors, get my brush from all angles, give it a little bit of a scrub on there, and we've got that in a really good condition, considering that we've been using a bright blue on a completely white, pristine virgin set of hairs.
Yep.
Right, so there's a couple of bits that I want to make a little bit more subtle while I use the last start paint. So work to the edges. I don't want any of the blocks of colours that I've put down sections looking too stark like a stripe. So that's the last one for that brush. I'm going to step down now to a medium. So before doing that, same practice here. Clean off that brush. Looking pretty good. Little bits are built up on the edge, but I can catch those later. Set it to the side, and we're going to take out our medium. Taking out the brushes, by the way, guys, just press on the tail end of it, and it'll stick up. So we have here medium.
Nice. Scrubbing on the palette, there we go.
Fantastic. I'm going to take some more Thousand Suns blue. Should have taken more out in the first place.
I think looking at this, something that I would probably do differently next time is, due to how dark the Huldra blue is, I reckon I would next time start with Huldra blue and some of the purple, just to bring it up, so that it would probably be closer to like that 50-50 mix, just to give it a bit more of the base colour.
It's not so dark.
But to be fair, that's also something that I could go back and fix anyway.
Yeah, you absolutely could.
Easily.
Also, the other thing is, we haven't got our brightest color down yet, and often it's only when you put down your final like 20% of your painting that you realize just like things look different next to a highlight, or things look different next to this or that, and it could be that you end up with some really deep recesses that look very, very cool next to your highlights or something, almost by accident. And if you're not happy with it, we're not just going start to finish here. It's an organic technique. If you don't like it, you can carefully go in even with a middle color and fuzz out an edge or do some alterations or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
So I'm using my smaller brush now. And jabbing at this. Is there any of the actual physical applications of the technique that you're having struggles with, or the angles or anything like that, or are you pleased how it's going?
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased. I think it is just... I think probably that is the only thing that I change. Everything, like the way it's coming out is good. I think just a slightly... Maybe a slightly richer base, but then as you say, that might not even be the case once there's some light colours on there, so...
We'll have to see. And if it's not, it's kind of it's an interesting discussion point, because that when I screw up on models, that's always the thing I think like, oh, why didn't you put more? For me, it's normally the layer just like 70% of the way through a color sequence. It's like, oh, why didn't you involve more of this color or that color, or you like your mid stage? I think that's where I screw up on models a lot. So everyone's got like predispositions to doing certain things for whatever reasons, because they're rushing or because they get excited by a color. Could be anything.
I think that my like, for me, it's like the early stages where I'm getting things down to like almost to prepare to do like multiple layers of stuff.
Yeah.
Where I'll get to a certain point and then go, the way I've laid this out, I'm not happy with. I need to actually lay it out differently, because with the units that I've been doing, they're slightly different, every single one of them. So it's a case of like nearly every time getting to a point and going, actually, that shouldn't look the way I've made it look, and having to go back and change it. Which again, one of the things that I really like about doing it this way is that there's so little pressure if you do decide you don't like it, because
whoopsie, go again.
You're hardly using any, like, comparatively, you're hardly using any paint. So you're never at the point where like you've slathered the model, or you've done your
it's not
done
got
your
big
18 coats required for a smooth white, and then gone, actually, I don't like that, I've got to start again. But if I put anything else on, I'm going to start losing detail.
Obscuring.
Yeah, it's actually ended up being how I paint my Empress Children stuff for the most part, is multiple layers. Just doing a single layer of the Huldra blue, the Adriatic blue, and then the ice yellow doesn't give me turquoise. It gives me a nice blue, but it doesn't give me turquoise. So I go back over it 3 times in order is how I've worked it out for getting the exact colour I want. So it sort of looks like a waste of time in a way. because I'm going back over the lightest ice yellow with the Huldra blue again. But every time you do it, the Huldra blue becomes more turquoise and less blue.
Yeah.
And so everything built up from it becomes more turquoise and less blue.
Yep.
Which
Bit by bit.
doing them in batch as well that way works really well. I've discovered.
Yeah, there's a load of different applications for it, and it is every time you paint is an opportunity to learn more about painting. And part of the nice thing of doing techniques this way is you're doing it in an organic way, but also encourages you to play, which is. And also, if you do make mistakes, if you don't look at it as your mistakes, like, oh God, I've screwed it up there. What have I done? If it's like, oh well, that's a really good mindset to have. It's one of the most important things about painting is failing. I think it trains you that things don't go right first time and stuff like that. And if you're prepared for that being an eventuality, and you're just like, all right, let's deal with it, then that is a really, really good. Well, it's an approach to life in general. You shouldn't be worrying about stuff like that. But when you're painting a model, a lot of the time, 80% of the way through, you can have real doubts. Oh God, I've wasted my time. What was I thinking? I shouldn't have tried something new, or shouldn't have got outside my comfort box, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's about the stage. If you're used to persevering through and fixing something, or being like, well, actually, like, this is the screw up I've got. How do we work with it? You can end up finding out some really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I used to do the thing a lot where I would get partway through and gone, I've messed this up and I don't think I can fix it.
Yeah.
I have to
admit,
admit,
I don't like painting. I'm not a painter anyway. Oh bloody hell.
Yeah, I think since I've started using these, it's genuinely gone from that to, okay, that didn't work how I thought it would, but what if I try this? Like, maybe that'll do something, and then if it works, great.
Just like, why not? And then from that, you've had an amazing learning experience.
Yeah.
All right. So, how is this stage going for you? Mine is coming out fairly well. Pretty pleased with it. I'm trying to make sure I don't do too obvious lines in these panels, so I'm fuzzing the edges.
I've gone up. I've skipped slightly, just getting a bit of the Warlord purple and the Hex Lichen, just because I wasn't getting a huge amount in the way of
difference
highlight out of it. So I kind of skipped up a step a little bit, but
as long as you do it gently, it's whatever looks right on the model is what is the right decision.
It's it's coming out really nicely now.
Sweet. So I am still working. The current color I have is Adriatic Blue from scale 75. I started mixing it into my previous layer, but now I'm happy with it as long as I've got a little bit of water on my brush. I'm happy with stippling it on just neat, not mixed with any other colors. If you do make a screw up, guys, you've got a thumb and you've got an index finger, it's fine to go in there and smudge it until it's right. Don't worry about it, and don't get preoccupied if you do think you've made a cock up. It really isn't the end of the world.
And sometimes when you do make a mistake, you'll look at it and go, "Oh, actually, that looks pretty good."
Yeah. That's part of what these palettes are for. Like this, all of this stuff would be a mistake, but one day I'm going to put down a wash over a silver section just because it's my palette, and I'm mixing the wash there, and be like, actually, that looks badass. That is really, really cool. Like, how can I apply that on something else?
There we go. If I hold that up to you,
that's looking good. Back it off a little bit. Yeah, that's looking pretty swanky.
There's quite a fun sort of. I'm trying so hard to not do it at an angle for the most part. I've slanted slightly, which means it's kind of got this. I don't know how to put it. It's almost like a shadow from one side.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look bad. It just.
Yeah.
I mean, if this wasn't on camera, I'd totally tell you that I did that intentionally. But I didn't.
There you go.
But it's worked, so it's okay. Which actually kind of fits with the previous conversation anyway. Of sometimes you'll make a mistake and it'll go, oh, that actually looks pretty good.
What a segue. So
all planned.
There we go, exactly that. So I'm using my neat Adriatic blue now, and then carefully making sure that every one of the panels within the center of it has some. If you are doing stippling like this, guys, make sure to keep rotating your brush, because whatever the pattern is of your end of your bristles, depending on where the paint is, where the water is, that will have it'll have a print to it, basically. So if you don't rotate it or mix things up by going backwards and forwards on different areas of your model, you can end up pretty much replicating like a almost a leopard print pattern or something like that by having the same pattern going on throughout. So it's just something to be mindful of, and it's why in cleaning I twist my brush, in painting I twist my brush, not as I'm using it, but between dabs, and that is the reason for it.
I feel like what I've kind of done here somehow is I don't have quite the same like textured effect that you've got, but I've got something that's slightly different but still looks good. So
cool.
It's
an accidental success.
Yeah. Although I say that it's building up into that. It's just
yeah, it could be that the next stage we both do the same flicky traditional dry brushing, and suddenly we're like, oh, actually they look pretty similar. Some of the nice things about this, guys, it's really easy to forget how many they're thin layers, and they're not covering all the model, and they're not even opaque layers. But it's very easy to forget how many layers you put down on something, and it sounds like a lot, but in time and in reality, it takes way less than putting them down in other ways.
Yeah.
But that part of the flip side of that is if you make a cock up on one layer, or something goes a bit weirdly on one, that's like 5% of your final model. So how it is realized in the end result could be very, very different from what you're expecting. One thing that we really should try one day, John, is doing this over chipping medium and then scraping through to weathering underneath.
Oh, that would be good. That would be fun.
I'm not sure if that's something you've ever tried.
I haven't. No,
it's very, very satisfying, and it's extremely fun and dangerously Moorish, because you could end up weathering your entire thing if you got too excited. But
I don't know if that's a bad thing. Really, my dreadnought arm was already pretty close to that.
Yeah, it's a really, really fun technique. So basically, we'd like stipple the entire thing bright orange beforehand, let's say, or even like spray undercoat it brown, and then stipple some really garish, jumpy bright orange on it. Put chipping medium over it, which is like a varnish basically, and then you do everything as normal. But at the end, you get some water on a paintbrush, and you gently agitate and scrape off, and it basically makes it easier for things to peel off. So the only thing is we have to be careful when we're doing our dry brushing stage is catching the edges, be a little bit more gently than we would. But it means that we can get to this stage, and then we could just run like a toothbrush over it or something, and have a load of completely organic, natural chipping going through to a bright orange underneath or something like that, which is very, very cool.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun technique. It's very, very satisfying to do.
This has become very sort of very like 80s synth. This in the best way.
It's a solid scheme. So I am using Caribbean blue now, which is a pretty significant step up color wise from the Adriatic blue that I was using. I'm gonna pull a bit more of the Adriatic blue into it.
I think I'm gonna try shifting up to the kind of pixie pink.
Go for it.
Just going to make sure that over. Mind you, it doesn't matter too much if I haven't got all of the Warlord out of here, because it's just one from one pink to the other, and they're both.
Oh, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Oh, Just in a big splodge. We'll fix that later.
The Warlord Purple is a paint where I just have... I don't have difficulty with the consistency of it. I know that it's not as like... Not like as rich, not as like heavily pigmented.
Yeah.
But it has this... It reacts so well to like using the dampening pad. So like, the first coat you get on is lackluster, and it doesn't really feel like you've done very much. But then if you go back over it like 2 times without putting anything else on the brush, you end up with like this really vibrant, rich pink colour.
You get loads off. It's weird, isn't it? Every paint behaves differently. And there can be multiple reasons why it would be doing that.
Yeah. It's kind of nice how you get used to it though, and you kind of get to know certain paints, and you're able to sit there and go, okay, well, it's this one, so I know
it's
how to get the most out of this.
It's going to do X, Y, or Z, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get a bit of the really like baby pink on the go.
I'm building up the layers of my brighter colour here.
There we go, and with the last, like literally it's only taken 4, 5 colours, and suddenly it's starting to more heavily resemble what you've done.
There you go.
I wonder if it's just the paints that I've used.
Could be. Could have. I was just going to say exactly the same thing. Like, can't be said enough how much different paints have different personalities. No different from brushes or models having different shapes or textures or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I believe I am ready to step up to pure Caribbean blue. This is a pretty mental minty green. So what this really helps facilitate for me is my next step is going into ice yellow, and this already has a fair bit of yellow in its colours. So it really eases that transition. And you'll notice that I'm doing quite a lot more of the top to bottom, side to side traditional dry brushing. Now I do have this, I'm getting towards the final steps.
It has just occurred to me just now as I'm doing this that the 2 things that we've done where I've like painted along are both things where the immediate reaction has been is that might be a bit much. I think I just like a challenge. I think I just just straight away it's like, okay, well this is going to be difficult. Let's go for that. Sure, why not?
Yep, absolutely.
Although so far I'd say that both of them have come out looking okay. So
yeah, definitely been successes. I'd say
can't be doing that bad.
So I'm patiently building up with this much brighter colour. Especially if you're doing vehicles, guys. If there is one section you're not particularly pleased with, you can weather the hell out of it later. Don't worry about it. Like, if that's something,
yeah, just really
that's
go
something
for
I
it.
do with. Yeah, that's something I do with basing. So if there's a bit of, at least when I'm applying tufts, if there's a bit of a base, I'm like, oh, that just doesn't work, or like, oh god, there's like green stuff showing through, or whatever it is. Cool, that's getting flowers on it. Like that is, and you were going to struggle to pick random places to make things look organic in terms of where those grasses were sprouting out, or where the chips were on the vehicle, or where that mud had hit the vehicle, whatever it is. If there's something where you're going to struggle to randomize it as a biased human, anyway, why not just let your mistakes previously govern that for you?
Yeah. Okay, so with the addition of the pixie pink, that's now where that's at.
That's looking pretty good.
Which is, I don't know, that's got quite a nice effect to it, I think. It's not quite as saturated, but you can now see the blue a bit better. Like
Yeah.
that base of blue is coming out.
Are you doing the dry brushing as well when going over these?
I'm just starting to get into that now.
Yeah, so remember to do it, even if it's your previous color. Remember to just give it a bit of that. It's the equivalent of taking before doing a stark edge highlight, just going a little bit towards the edge of a panel or something like that.
Yeah.
If you do that, that'll set a foundation for us to put down because we're jumping into mental colors soon, as far as them being drastically different from what we've used so far.
Actually, yeah, going over, doing a bit more of the kind of
traditional
dry brushing, especially around the very edges of the panels, is starting to. It's bringing out the base color more.
Yeah, just keep going at it. Add a little bit more paint if you need to, or just use the dampening pad. But put that time in. I mean, what it looks like I'm doing now, it probably looks like I'm pretty much achieving nothing, but it is slowly and subtly nuancing those sections. I think people get overly concerned with stuff going crazy fast, and they do this as well. Like, we've just base coated a panel, put down 3 or 4 layers of highlights of transitions, and a couple of layers of highlights, and we've got 2 more layers to go. Like, we are going fast in terms of what we've achieved on our model and the time we've put in.
Yeah.
Just because it's dry brushing, I find you often need to slap yourself and be like, no, it's fine. Like I am making good. Like, just because it's dry brushing, it doesn't have to go at the speed of light. Like, if we look at this in terms of how much of a model we've coated with how many different stages, we are making really good time.
I'm going to try something here, he said, cautiously.
Filled, brimming with confidence.
I've gone back up to the large. I've got pretty much nearly everything off in terms of paint, and I'm just going to go over the whole thing very quickly.
That's a great idea.
It's bringing the
edges.
It's bringing the edges, and it's also it's properly bringing the blue out a bit more.
Yeah, do it.
So I'm just gonna.
I do that. Like, right now, I could get a big ass brush like the XL, and I could do a gentle. Sorry, that's Alexa. Alexa, shut up.
I don't have an Alexa. Do they respond to shut up? Can you tell them to respond to shut up? Like, program them.
They already do.
That's awesome. I like the fact that they knew that would be a thing.
Shouts out in the middle of recording whilst I'm doing nothing. I'm struggling to connect at like volume 6 or 7 or whatever that is. Naughty Alexa. Anyway, for the interruption from my non-compliant technology.
Not enough praying to the machine spirit, apparently.
No, definitely not. It's me spending too much time doing corn, aren't I? Not got time for anything else. So I'm gonna stipple these. As I was saying, I could get my huge brush, the XL, and I could go over this with a white to make sure that where the edges were hit, they were really bright or something like that. Or I could just do it for a holistic. Go with might do it with the ice yellow when we get to the ice yellow. I'm fairly pleased with how that stage has gone, so it is time, I believe, to bring out everyone's favourite colour in the world. Ice yellow. And apparently we can't do anything. No matter what colour we're doing, we're both painting things in completely different colours, and we are going to end up using the same one. So I'm going to remove a little bit of the paint that's built up on this brush. No. And then we're going to pop out a little bit of this on our palette. It is from Vallejo Model Color, and it is ice yellow, and it is a lovely way to highlight to something that isn't white. Basically, that's the particular strength of it. It goes with a lot of other colors surprisingly well, and that is going to be what our colors build up to. Again, we've gone from dark pastel, lighter pastel, more pastel. Each of these is a significant jump up. So I'm going to take some of this ice yellow, and I'm going to mix it into my Caribbean blue to make sure that we don't do anything too mental.
So if I just turn this around for you, having gone over the whole thing, like roughly with the large, just with some of the pixie pink on, I can see in the little preview that it looks like the sections that aren't pink and purple look more blue.
Yeah.
It's properly brought it out.
Sweet. I think my favourite bit is that front section of it. I think it's the front, not the back. I know it's the rear.
That section.
Yeah, like from there and probably to your left, what looks like to my right towards the end of it. I think it's worked really well on the panels.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fun way of doing it. It's again not the same. It's not the same way that I did the Typhon. Like they're both like
you could achieve a pretty much exactly the same result and do things completely differently. Literally, even do them like backwards. More than possible for things to go that way.
Yeah. I think I'll probably before we stop, I'll grab it off the shelf so I can do a kind of like just to show this is two different things that you can do with similar techniques that end up coming out very different.
Yeah. Oh shit! Whoops! I made a whoopsie.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Just giving there we go. And you have taken a little bit of a battering, you poor medium brush, you.
Yeah, I think it ends up. It's the last stage with heavy application. Is what the poor medium brush catches.
Yep. It's done a lot of Terminators and Space Marines in recent days. In all colours. There's pink, turquoise, yellow, blue, purple,
Poor things, it
green.
just getting washed and hung up to recover every night.
Pretty much, yeah. It's also the one brush that I forgot to wash once and just left. It's the only one that I did it with.
If you don't have airbrushed in it, have you got any gin or vodka or clean alcohol in the house?
Yes.
Because you can. Okay, so you can take some of that and use that to clean it, and then clean it with a brush cleaner afterwards, and you will be surprised how, like, if you clean it onto white kitchen towel or something, you'd be surprised how it will carry on yielding paint for longer than you'd expect.
Yeah.
So that might be worth doing. What I can do is I can get you another set sent in the post, but in the meanwhile, you can do that, or it allows you to rotate them. If you're having some real heavy usage days, it can be useful to have more than one set on the go.
Yeah.
I do like so if you want to jump to a completely clean brush for a white highlight and your XL has got like the residue of deep blue on it, you're going to be, whatever you do, you're going to be doing in baby blue. So I'm in this stage now where I was worrying things weren't going to work, as I always do, and then you get to this stage where you put down the second to last step and you look at it and you think, actually no, it's going to turn out looking pretty good, and hopefully it's going to look coherent with the rest of the model. If it doesn't, I'll have to do some thinking and work out why.
I'm now doing my ice yellow as well.
Sweet. Have you got some of your previous layer in with it?
Yes, yeah. I still had a bit of I somewhat cheated a little bit. I still had some of the pixie pink on the brush, so yep. I gave it a decent scrub, but I didn't fully
That's
like
fine.
clean it.
That's all good, whichever way you get there.
Oh, that's a bit heavy. Get that wipe.
Get that thumb in there. Slight it all up.
Okay. I have to say, I do love ice yellow. It is the one paint that it still surprises me every now and again. Well, like I go to stipple it or dry brush it, and there's just more than I thought there was. And it happens at least once a day where I'm like, okay, ice yellow time. Whoa, hang on.
Yeah. I've got that. I still got Caribbean blue mixed in with mine, and it's still jumping out, looking pretty scary in terms of its potency.
I'm sure a lot of it is that by this point it's like, I really don't want to mess up the final layer. All of this has gone well. I don't want
to stumble at the final hurdle. A lot of it will be, it's just out of all these paints, they've got more and more white in them as we go, as they get more towards the pastel spectrum. So this is the final one we're using, and it has the highest proportion of it in. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit more stippling until I'm happy with how much paint I have on my brush, and when I'm fairly convinced that I'm not going to make a massive error, by doing it, I will start dry brushing too.
Oh,
Pretty solid though.
I did it. I did the thing. It surprised me again. I found a little pocket, and it went. It's fine. It can be fixed.
You can always take our darker colour and jump in there. So now we're here. I'll test it on my palette, and then bring it to my model, and top to bottom, I'll give it. I'm going over everywhere. Even the recesses are getting hit with this. Making sure I go top to bottom. But this is really important for coherency. And then when we're sure that our brush isn't going to do anything unexpected, then we can hit the edges throughout. Also, looking pretty sweet, actually. I was talking about weathering and stuff like that. I'm not particularly happy with how it looks around these smokestacks, but it's safe to say that those smokestacks are going to be... this rhino is going to look like it needs to go for an MOT. So there is going to be black smog aplenty built up around them. And I can hide the bits I'm not happy with. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, guys. Obviously, it's better if you don't have a section you're unhappy with. But if that governs where you do something, that's fine. Roll with it. It's just efficient. So I've cleaned off my brush for the majority part. I'm not specifically adding in my previous color, the Caribbean blue, to the ice yellow. What I am doing is I'm mixing it in the same place on the palette. So there is going to be some of that left. I'm going to be taking great care with it, though.
Okay. Yeah, that's
interesting.
Not too badly. So if
interesting. The bit that I think I like the most of yours is also the bit that I like the most of mine. So maybe it's just that the front and back bits of the rhinos encourage certain, I don't know, you to do certain things or whatever. Yeah, that looks really good.
It's now properly 80s in the best way.
What colour are you going to do its gun?
I think I'm going to do the same thing I did with the Typhon and have it gold.
Cool.
Because it's very over the top, but I did the same thing with my Imperial Knights, where one of them's got 2 Defiler claws instead of a Thunderstrike gauntlet.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know what colour to do it, because I thought, well, it's Emperor's Children. There's a lot of purple, there's some turquoise, there's some white. The trim is gold. I feel like just the standard metal would look a bit weird. So I used the Vallejo liquid gold on it, and that settled it. I was like, well, from that point on, vehicle weapons they're going to have to be gold, because it's just the right colour for it.
I was going to say, what you can do, gold wash. You can wash gold with so many different colours. You can wash it with purple, green, yellow makes it go like super yellowy warm gold. Red actually looks quite nice. So you could, if you wanted to, you could use a purple wash on those gold bits if you wanted to pull things together. Yeah. Or you could use a blue wash on them even. Purple. A good purple wash over gold looks the business as far as I'm concerned. Looks fantastic. It makes it look pretty regal as well, which would be appropriate.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, I'm taking real care now with my pure ice yellow. I might do as I said I would do and jump to a larger brush and do some very careful kind of traditional dry brushing all over, but just filling in the panels.
I'm just
now.
About to attempt that. Attempt being the
keyword. We'll see. All right.
It'll probably be fine. No need to worry.
It will. The chances are it will be fine. Everything will be all right in the end.
Okay, how are we doing there? Really, really going at the palette. I want to make sure that I don't have any nasty surprises. Okay.
So after thinking mine would end up looking really different from the other bits I'd done previously, I think it's turned out acceptably fine.
Yeah,
and I've got a little trick that I can do as well, which I'll show John in a bit, which is a really good way to just force things to look coherent. Ooh. If they haven't.
I just accidentally battle damaged part of mine.
Okay.
I think one of the layers had not dried properly before I went over the
You
top of it, so I've
knocked off
scraped.
an edge.
Yeah, I've scraped an edge.
Yeah, it can
I've
happen.
actually not done that before. That's the first time I've ever done that.
Really?
Yeah, in all of my Imperium box painting shenanigans so far, I've managed to avoid doing that to anything.
Right, so we're done. So that's my final brush. Is looking like it needs a little bit of cleaning, so I'm just going to take some of the water now, do that, then I'm going to jump back to this one here. Again, guys, this is an excuse to do more cleaning on your brush. You're going to go and get a lighter color and mix it with a darker color, and hopefully that should help them both exit the brush together. Okay, and then let's hit these edges. Nice. So if you are trying to dry brush on edge highlights, guys, you want to go at 45 degrees to your edge. And just to be safe, you can go from both directions.
Going after raised details like Aquilas and skulls and stuff with just a really light coat of ice yellow is weirdly satisfying.
Oh, it is. It's because it's that magic last step. I do it on my my grey tone basing. The last really careful dry brush of white that just picks out all the details on them is fantastic. It's really good. So I'm making sure to go from every angle with this edge highlight. So I'm working from the in out on these steps, and then from side to side on the stacks, top to bottom on the steps. You can see I'm taking great lengths to ensure that I don't have too much or too little on the brush before I start doing anything.
I have to admit I've ignored the stacks on mine, but that's because they'll be again painted gold, so the very top of the exhausts are going to be a different colour to the side armour.
Makes sense. You pleased with it?
Yeah, I'm really happy with this.
Fantastic.
I like it. I kind of like it being a different style to the Typhon. I kind of want most of the vehicles to have some different feels to them. I want it to be a kind of like that feeling of them basically using whatever they've still got, and there's not really a uniformity to it. Everything is a bit personalised and a bit what's left, and depending on which follower decided to take a bucket of paint to the vehicle will decide what the vehicle looks like.
So just using my dampening pad, I've popped another drop in it, and then getting a little bit more edge highlighting done. And I'm pretty sure, as far as the dry brushing is concerned at least, that is me happy with it. Okay, so it's looking pretty funky. So what I'm going to do now is, and this is the thing that I said was really helpful for coherency, is I'm going to grab another brush. I'd rather use a large one, but I've only got a small one to hand, so I'll be using a 0. Literally, guys, if you had a 3, I'd choose to use that, or a 4. But this is what I have. So I'm going to pop a tiny bit of Huldra Blue on our palette, and then from the side, I'm not going to just plow straight into the middle of it. I'm going to drag some of this off and make a little bit of a wash of it. Test it on my hand, see how brutal we're looking. And I might do this in 2 stages. We'll see how it appears on the model. But I'm just working into the edges that we have. First contrast, so what I'm going to do is I'll do a first pass, and then in the order that I painted it, I'll go back, dilute it, so it's pretty much entirely water, and then a second pass pushing into the recesses. So that is to feather out and kind of fuzzy edge that first blend. But this will help push the contrast in general, but also if I do this all over the model, no matter what happened in terms of the differences of my highlights or anything else like that, there's one stage that is going to be exactly the same, and that is pure Huldra blue in the recesses, softened a little, but they're going on. And then the other thing I'll do is I will use a version of this to put a little dot around the rivets too. I can push into the edges here. And this is just diluted with water, what I'm doing now. The other thing this does do is when you dry brush, you do get a few small little dry flecks in the recesses. This is going to dye them all blue. So slightly more delicately, we've got this detail here. Fill that one in. A little bit too much water on my brush. Remove it. I hope you do the next one a bit neater. There we go. Fill those in, and our steps.
Yeah, it just brings it out that little bit more, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just a way to exaggerate things, and it's a very controllable technique. You put one vastly diluted thing down, and then if you weren't happy with how that went, you get an even diluted thing and put it down even more. Before I do this section, actually, I'm going to remove some of that dust we built up with one of our brushes. And then going at this. So turn your model to whatever angle is the most helpful. Try and get a line pretty much in that recess at 45 degrees. This one too. Working fairly fast because while it's wet, that affords us the opportunity to do our second stage and just push into it with pretty much 90-something% water. And you could do this a couple of times on those recess sections if you really wanted to make them push it and make them look more stepped back. You can do this as many times as you like. I can take a really diluted one, dot those rivets. Yeah. Just touch them at the end to bring off any excess. But with all of these done, it's a very fast way to do some detailing that I think you get a decent reward from.
Yeah.
We're trying to get stuff on the table here, so spending too much time doing stuff is probably not what we're after. We've gone at a pretty decent pace. We've painted half a panel of a vehicle in a full panel, half a vehicle almost in, I guess, about half an hour. But I do think this type of time on rivets is always worth it. You could be dotting them with silver afterwards as well. And that contrast you get from having it next to the dark wash that you put around it, especially if you did dot them silver, would really, really be worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
Those little points on things make such a big difference. Equally, if you've got hinges, you can just paint black and then paint silver and wash once, all that type of stuff. It's really, really worth doing, in my opinion. Those additional 10 minutes spent total, and it could literally be only that 10 minutes total, they can make a model look 50% better. I've got this line here. I want to push this detailing, so I'll fill that in. Take something a bit darker for that. There we go. Better. So just pin wash that one. There we go. That's pretty much all of them done.
Yeah, it just adds definition to all the little details, doesn't it?
Yeah, why not? Like I say, if I was to paint all these silver now and give them a dot of that, it look fantastic. And even like that, you could just dot them with ice yellow. Actually, give each of those rivets a dot, and then you're still pulling out those individual places. There we go. That is pretty much it. How are you feeling about yours?
I'm pretty happy with this. It's I think I'd say I'd still probably next time on a different vehicle. I'll do the same thing on each of these panels now that I've done it on that one. But I would probably start by mixing the blue with the purple at the very beginning and doing a base coat of that, and then doing just the blue over the top. But apart from that, everything else, I'm really happy with how that's come out.
Yeah, you can tell you're doing yours on a newer tank than mine because your details in the hinges are more defined. So actually, they look, see those dark lines in the middle of those pink sections look badass. They look significantly better.
It's kept like the depth of those little hatches and kind of just recess sections as well.
Yeah, they look really, like, having those jumping out in the middle of your pink sections looks awesome.
I will just very quickly grab that Typhon so people can see the difference. So this is the first. I seem to do that with these brushes. The first model I painted was a massive creature caster model that intimidated me, and then the first vehicle I painted was a Forge World Typhon siege tank, because as you do.
Yeah, I mean, why not just hundreds of pounds worth of stuff? Let's just rock on.
Preparing this to be painted was nightmarish because it's such an expensive tank. I was like, I can't take a saw to this, can I? Oh, I've got to. All right.
I have no choice.
Yeah. So yeah, this is what I did. This is the first vehicle that I painted with these brushes, and you can see it's like similar technique but different execution. So I did a base coat of purple and pink, and then I used Huldra blue, and then Adriatic blue, and then ice yellow, and built it up so that it's kind of a bluey, turquoisey, whitey section on various pieces. But it's used more as like a highlight. If I guess you could put it there, so you have it's kind of used more as a highlight almost. That is something I'm not decided on yet. I feel like gold would be too much, given that there's so much other gold on it, because all of the rivets are gold and the.
To get a different colour on the go there, you could do them in a like middle silver, wash it a couple of times with black, and then you could cake on some pigments or something, which would be a way to bring another colour in. That would be quite nice. Or you could just do them a dark metal, wash them once, and then dry brush them really carefully with a very bright other metal, and then put like a light dusting of pigments on. Having a silver in there might look quite cool, actually, I think.
Yeah, I might give that a try actually, because it's got to be not gold, because I have also got over quite a few sections of this tank with I used the large and went over it with gold, like dry brushed very very lightly certain sections, because I wanted the idea of it being like at some point someone probably painted this thing gold. And then it was repainted at some point after that, so there's like little weird, like worn sections where you can see it kind of peeking through. But with the gun and the spikes and the chains, I was like, tracks as well might be a bit much.
A little bit ostentatious.
Yeah, maybe a little bit over the top, even for that chaos faction.
I definitely do that. Like any like. Not like dark silver, but like a middle to brightish one. Wash it once, wash it twice if you like, with probably just with black, so you're not adding any other colours into that, and then give it a dry brush with either the same silver or a much lighter silver, again just on the edges to show the wear and tear. And like I did with my white on my Bloodthirster, like I spent half an hour really carefully just with the one colour, making sure that I got all of these sections before I put my glazes down. I did it a couple of times, and I think it was really, really worth it. So you could do that with the silver, slowly build it up, and you'll have a really nice organic looking thing. And if you want to introduce some more pigments there, rock on. If you don't, then you're done.
Yeah. I think I'll do that. That will definitely be a lot more sensible than just blinding people with which feels appropriate but also not fair. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, it does a really good, really, really effective use of it.
Yeah, I'm super happy with that. I'm probably going to end up going away tonight and painting the rest of the tank like that now. Now that I've got a much clearer idea as to what I'm doing with it. It's, as I say, it's kind of, it is similar to what I'd done to other vehicles, but it's not the same. There's like a different. It's more stippling. A lot of the stuff I've done has been like that kind of circular motion more than anything else. Almost like buffing it out. But yeah, I really like the effect that's given. That's great.
That's super solid. One one thing you could consider doing is if you want those. So if you can find an excuse to put dark stuff, so like dark, like black, throughout that model, it's going to make the other stuff look even brighter. So where you've got those grills on the back next to your exhausts, you could wash the grills right down with black several times, or even just paint them black and then actually maybe paint them silver and then wash them black a few times.
Yeah.
In exactly the same way as the tracks. And if you've got that spread throughout your model, if it's something you are happy with doing, you're just going to, all those bright transitions are going to look more awesome, more punchy, more crazy. And it's a good way to add a nice crisp edge in there. Like if those recessed grille panels were black, then you could have like the color transitions from the deep purple through to the bright white in the blue. You've got those going on. That'll be going on next to black, just like pretty much flat, solid black, which I think would look really awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It's anything to bring it out and make it more bright and eye catching. I think is the polite way of putting it. Probably.
Just get a silver down carefully in those recesses, wash it all with black, and then straight away, I think that'll have a pretty much instantaneous effect. And if you've got that with the tracks as well, you're just framing your bright, crazy picture with nice black rims and detailing.
Definitely, yeah.
Do it.
Oh, so much stuff to. It's such a massive project this has become now, but it's all fun, so it's fine.
Amazing. That looks badass, dude. I really like it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really good. Thank you.
My pleasure, dude. We can do another one of these anytime you like. If there's another area of something you want to go through, or you want me to literally be sat down with some colors you've picked and test something like live to see if it works, or for us to work out a scheme or anything like that, it's something that we can arrange for sure.
Yeah, that would be really good. Something that I could do actually is if people put like suggestions in the comments for like color combinations they want to see.
Oh yeah.
Things
if they want to try and screw me over, we'll use our brains when we do it. But actually, some things might be like, if someone says, "Well, hey, why don't you involve a metallic blue in there with a normal purple?" Like, we can try that and possibly fail, but I'm quite happy to give some stuff a go. I don't think it's as easy to make it impossible to work as people would consider. And sometimes you can discover something really interesting by doing things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'll if there's any suggestions, they should go in the comments so we can take a look, because I want to do more of these. This has been fun, and I've now got yet another way to paint stuff, which is always good.
While we're on lockdown, whatever keeps us sane.
Definitely.
For sure. If people do have questions, please answer them. What maybe John could do is, if there's multiples, then one of his mods or someone could go through and collect them, and I'll address them all in one big post that he can make sure appears towards the top of the comments or something like that. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the technique, the brushes, the design, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'll make sure we collect them, and then when you guys are watching this, if you take a look at the pinned comment, if there's a pinned comment there, it is because there is any questions that have been asked have been answered in that comment, so you'll be able to see what the answers to those are. So yeah, that was great. Thank you very much again, Byron. We'll do this again soon, hopefully.
It's your kind of bi-monthly pep talk where your momentum gets built up and you get 500 crazy ideas. So I'm more than happy to help fuel it any way I can.
All it means is that I just keep having to buy more stuff to paint. as if I didn't already have a massive backlog. But it's fine, because it means I get to get around to it eventually, so it's good.
Absolutely.
Right, okay guys, well, hopefully that was interesting and useful, and if you want to take a look at the Artis Opus brushes, then there will be links in the description. Again, if there's any questions you have, then do leave them in the comments below. We'll make sure they're answered, and you'll be able to find the answers in the comments too. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.